Scientology could be called, well, you could call it a religion of religions.
Hello. It's Andy Nolch here, the Space Cowboy, and I have another briefing for you that doesn't really have anything to do with Scientology, but this is part 2 of my graffiti story. So if you're new to this briefing, go to part 1, which I've already posted, and you can start from there listening to this story. It's my experience with the justice system, and I think it's really important that people listen to this experience, because they're coming after us with the vaccinations and the COVID restrictions and the rules. So you need to know how the justice system works. It's really important. You can't just have no idea how it works, or have an idea that's based on like TV shows you've seen or something. The justice system, you've got to know how they operate, what's their procedure and everything. And by listening to my whole story, you'll learn the procedure and the inside baseball and how it actually, what actually goes on. Because I just think it's essential. It's like, I don't know, it's like at school or something like that. You need to know what happens when you get a detention. Because you might be a good student in the classroom and never get into trouble, and you see some other student get into trouble, but you don't really know how the whole cycle, the whole experience of getting into trouble works. And that might be fine for school, but in our society and in the times we're living in, I think it's really important to know what the getting in trouble cycle is, right? Because there's people who are posting stuff online and the police are coming after them. There are businesses. There was a pub that opened up recently to like serve beer, and they got hit with like a $22,000 fine, and the police came in and stuff. This is what's happening, and as they ramp up the police state, you need to know how the law works. And I'm not a criminal expert. I'm not like a law expert or anything, but I have an idea of how the system works. And actually knowing how the system works actually gives me a lot more confidence in breaking the rules, because I know what they can and can't do. Some people, the idea of maybe getting a big COVID fine or something like that might freak them out. Now, I would be like, I don't really care. You know what I mean? Because I know ways to get around it and stuff. Like, let's say you've got a lot of assets and they're all in your name. Then maybe you'll be concerned about getting a fine. But if they're not in your name, you can just declare yourself bankrupt, and you can get around things. You got to know what happens, the procedure of what happens when you get bankrupt and stuff like that. And that's a part of this story. So I'll tell you it all, because that's what happened to me. So you got to know how the justice system works. The justice system is the disciplinary system. It's you've been a naughty boy in the classroom, we're putting you on the brown chair, we're giving you a detention. It's that whole system. Because we have it in our society. It's the legal justice system, and it is dodgy. And lawyers make a lot of money out of it, because when people have their first experience in the justice system, they have no idea how it works, and they're scared to death. It's very scary. It's a very scary thing. You just instantly get scared. It's not like getting in trouble at school. It's a whole new level. It's like, whoa, it's really scary. But after you understand it, all that sort of stuff, if you get in trouble again in the future, you're much less scared. Because you know what's going on. Anyway, so this is my story, and it's long, and so this is part 2. So I was mentioning how the Lawyer X scandal was coming out, how she was secretly working for the police, the secret police and stuff, yet pretending to be a lawyer for mafia type people. And she was telling the police stuff about her clients, which is illegal, and the police were encouraging her to do it and paying her to do it, so they were corrupting the legal system. And one of the things she said is when she went public about secretly, being a police spy, one of the things she actually said is, she goes, I was worried they were going to kill my kids and they were going to kill her possibly. And you thought, oh crap, is she talking about the mafia or something? And it's like, no. She was talking about the police. So that's how crazy the police are. The police are that corrupt. Even though they're supposed to be stopping murders and stuff like that, they themselves would do murder, you see. So, and they'll say, well, we were doing it to protect we didn't want, if they did do it or whatever, they would say, we're doing it to protect our reputation because Lawyer X was trashing the police reputation and exposing secret operations and stuff. Well, if some mafia dude killed some other mafia dude, he would say, well, we did it because we were protecting our business and he was causing problems, and people don't just murder someone else for no reason. But of course the mafia can't do it. Some corporation can't, well, they do it, but they're not supposed to. The police will go after someone in a corporation who murders someone for some reason within their corporation, possibly for public relations or something. They had to murder someone or something, and the police will come after them. And it's like, they're like, police like, you can't murder because you just can't murder. It's against the law. Yet the police themselves are doing murders. And so when Lawyer X said that, she knows how the police really work. So when she said that, she actually meant it. That she knew that the cops were able to actually murder one of her kids or something, or murder her. So it lets you, because she knows what the cops get up to in these things. And when you look into the gangland stories in Melbourne and stuff, and the mafia stories, there's like rumors of the cops murdering someone, and it's all just ridiculous. So that's our criminal justice system. The people who are supposed to be stopping crime are themselves doing crime. But anyway, as I was saying, my lawyer was involved with Lawyer X, and was a Lawyer X type person. And usually what happens is that how they get these lawyers to become police spies, and maybe they do this with other people as well, is they've been caught doing something dodgy, or they set them up, right? And they're going to get in trouble with the law, and they pressure them in. They say, we'll let you off if you become a police spy for us. And they use the word informant. So that's a euphemism. Makes it sound nicer. They call a police informant. It's just, they don't say spies, because it just doesn't sound as professional. And that's one thing you got to learn as well, is euphemisms and public relations and sales talk, because so many things use these sorts of things. Like if doctors, which happens all the time, they'll accidentally kill a patient, and they'll call it, like, when they're referring to it, they'll call it doctor's mishaps or whatever, or doctor's accidents or something like that, instead of just saying doctor's murders and stuff, or doctor's accidental murders. They don't like to say that sort of stuff because it doesn't sound nice, so they use public relations. But anyway, so the former lawyer I had was one of these type that was working for him, and I could tell it, and then I predicted it and suggested it as a conspiracy theory, and I was pretty certain. And then information went on, and it came out that he was. And now something's happened where he's no longer being used by them, and they've totally flipped on him, and they're trying to trash his reputation and bankrupt him, and he can never practice law again. So that's it. They built him up and they used him, and now they shut him down because he did something. And I suspect it was maybe he accepted money to try and go public, to try and expose them, possibly what Lawyer X did. Because Lawyer X, even when she was working for him as a police spy, she wasn't an honest and good police spy. She was like helping the mafia at the same time, and she was screwing over both sides and just getting all this money. I'm not totally sure, but that's what it seemed like she was both doing. She was playing both sides. It's possible that she was telling the mafia, look, they're using me as a police spy. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I never told you that, but just pretend like, you don't know that I'm a spy. You know what I mean? That's becoming a double agent in intelligence activities. So she was sort of possibly being a double agent, and then they wanted her to go public, and they possibly paid her heaps to go public because they were like, we're trying to expose Victoria Police and trash their reputation because the mafia has a bad reputation, but Victoria Police is a mafia. The government is a mafia, okay? Everything's a mafia. Hollywood's a mafia. It's how everything works. It's not just the Italian mafia. There's Chinese mafia, there's all these mafias. Everything is run like a mafia. Scientology is kind of run like a mafia, you know? It's just how things operate. So then with my case, what happened is, like I said, because I had that dodgy lawyer, I got a bad result on the court case. But what the judge did, which was really quite interesting, is that when she gave out the sentence, like during the court case, I could tell when my lawyer was talking badly, she sort of looked at me during the court case and gave me the look like, I just want to ask you, like I want to talk to you because your lawyer's an idiot. And of course that didn't happen because it's like when you're in the court case, you just sit there because you're not a lawyer and they sort of act like they're all top and classy and you're just like some idiot sitting there and then they do all their talking and you're kept out of their conversation. And that's why a lot of the time with court cases, a lot of dodgy stuff goes on because like the person who's actually there just left out of the conversation and they don't even know all the legal terms and they can screw over someone. Like for example, the Port Arthur killing in Tasmania, the mass shooting that the government did, that didn't even go to a court case. And the guy was saying that he was innocent because he didn't do it, the government did it. And the guy was saying, Martin Bryant was saying he was innocent. And they did it to try and ban guns. And they succeeded in Australia, but there was American media there coincidentally that day, or there was a lot of Americans there at that tourist site that day, coincidentally, you know, conveniently. And so it was being used as an example for America. So America was supposed to probably have lost their guns probably only like a few years after Port Arthur. So they should have, or maybe 5 years down the track after Port Arthur. But Americans are just so stubborn, they just did shootings and stuff and just Americans would just not give up. In fact, there was, I think that, maybe it was Columbine, the school shooting, and I think that was a few years after Port Arthur, and I'm sure they would have said, let's ban guns. I wasn't there when it happened, but I'm sure they would have said, let's ban guns. Look, Australia did it after their shooting in 1996, and when was Columbine? Like around 2000 or something. So then they would have said, you know, let's ban it. It was successful in Australia. They were using Australia as an example, and they're going to be doing the same with COVID stuff, and they already are. Anyway, ridiculous. But the Martin Bryant guy, he said he's innocent. He wasn't even there. And his lawyer pressured him for ages into saying he's guilty or whatever, because then it doesn't have to go to trial. Because in a courtroom, the court case is quick and shuts up and is over really quickly if the guy just confesses guilt. But if the guy says, no, I'm not guilty, then they have to really open up all the evidence in the court case and it goes on for days and days and days, right? And if the government did the shooting, which they did, then it enables people to hear the dodginess of their evidence, right? So they really wanted Martin Bryant to say he was guilty, right? But he didn't. For months he said no. And then they got him a new lawyer, and this lawyer was maybe even better. See, they get set up with lawyers. The guy doesn't even get a chance to choose his own lawyers. And when you're locked up in jail, you can't get phone calls and all this sort of stuff. They control everything. And so your just hands are tied. And you've got your court case coming up. From Martin Bryant's point of view, his hands are tied. The media said he did it. He's got his court case coming up. He can't even really pick and choose his lawyers. It tends to be that they assign you a lawyer and he gets a lawyer. And then, of course, this new lawyer somehow talked him into, he talked him into saying he was guilty for it. And they pressure him into it. So this is where it's like, and then the court case would occur and Martin Bryant's there behind the scenes. He can't even talk and it's just these lawyers talking. You know what I mean? So that's why court cases can be really dodgy, because the person who is there, saw the crime and everything, can't even just talk to the judge and say, hey judge, this is what happened, blah, 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 because they're not allowed to talk because it's the lawyer who can talk. You see what I mean? So this is where it's like, I mean, I had, this will come up later on, but I had, when I appealed one of my thingos, I appealed it and they didn't even have me there during the appeal, and I was like, how the hell could they even hold the appeal without me being even being at the court case? I'm like, how's that even possible? It's totally unfair. Because I was ready and I was asking them to go, and they were stopping me from going to the court case, and I'm like, it's just so dodgy. And I'm like, now I see, when I see stuff on news and stuff, I'm like, you just know, how it can all be stitched up and controlled. Anyway, I'll get into that later. But so Martin Bryant got put into having to say he was guilty, and I think what they did is they said something like, you will never be allowed to have visits at the prison or phone calls if you don't say you're guilty. And so of course he wanted to have, visits from his mum or whatever and stuff like that. So then he had to say he was guilty. Anyway, that's a whole nother conspiracy, but what was I saying? So anyway, so the judge looked at me, and she wanted to. I could tell she wanted to talk to me to find out what was going on, and anyway, what she did is she gave out the sentence, and it was kind of steep. It was steep, but it was like 200 hours community work, and when you factor in that around about this time, there was a guy who cracked an egg on a politician's head. And it was like he cracked an egg from like a foot away, and it was kind of like it was pretty much like he just hit him on the head. And he did it while cameras were rolling and everything. I actually think he was a government intelligence operative. I very much think that from what I saw, because I was in the room when it happened. It was the Egg Boy incident. And he got like nothing. He got nothing for what he did. And he actually hit a politician. So when you factor that in and you go, oh, Andy got 200 hours community work, I mean, it's totally unfair. And that's what the first judge said. And then this story gets even deeper and even bigger. It gets worse than what that was. So it was 200 hours community work. It was, I had to give the government my DNA. It was, I had to do a men's abuse to women's course, which is just like, what the hell has that got to do with anything? I guess just because it was kind of like, the media made out it was like a gender thing and stuff. They were making out that I hated women in general, and even though I said, that's not my argument, I'm against modern feminism, which is fake feminism. I'm not actually against feminism, okay? I'm against the fake leftist feminism, you know what I mean? And then I had to pay a fine for the grass, but, oh no, I think I maybe, yeah. So that was the thing, the punishment or whatever. And so, also what the dodgy lawyer I had did is he brought up arguments in the court case that made it look like, you need to know this sort of stuff because in case you get set up with a dodgy lawyer in the future as well, because this can happen to anyone. Like, you might just have a court case that isn't in the media and doesn't involve right or left wing stuff, and your lawyer might have been paid out by the other side because they want you to lose, right? It's a sort of tactic that they use. You might be doing like a workers' compensation or something for like a sore hand, and you're going up against some corporation, and they don't want you to win, basically, because they can't have all these people winning for this sore hand thing. So then they always make sure that they corrupt the lawyer. Because something happened to my mum actually, which I could tell the story about my mum, but it was, they make out that they care about women's rights and stuff, but she sort of works for like a government organisation, but it's like a government organisation that's privately run, so somehow the profit's not government, and it's one of these ridiculous thingos where they've managed to privatize a government business so that then it makes a profit, but it ends up, because it's got the contract to do all the deliveries, it just ends up being a rort, and it's just all the, like, you just got bureaucrats that are in there that are making a profit. It's just half private, half not, and it's just you're better off just having it as a government service, because they make the argument private business does a better job, and yeah, it does, but not when you say this corporation is the only one that can drive the trains, or this corporation is the only one that can deliver the mail, or this corporation is the only one that can run a prison. They've got this sweet ass deal with the government, and they don't do a more efficient job. They do a more expensive job because they're the only ones with the contract. Anyway, it's ridiculous, but it's just shifty stuff. But she had something with her hand, and they stitched her up in her court case as well. And so she ended up spending, she didn't even really have a court case. It didn't even get to that stage yet, but she ended up probably blowing $6,000 in legal fees. And when she was telling me the situation, I explained to her how the legal system works. And I'm like, you've been stuffed over. Like, this is how, like, the lawyer that you hired isn't working for you. She got some lawyer from somewhere else because somehow she was assigned it and stuff. And I was like, you're not going to get anywhere with this. If you keep on pushing this, you're just going to waste more legal fees and lose the court case. I mean, that lawyer's basically stolen your money. And then I think she backed off from it, which was good, because it was not going to get anywhere. That wasn't a left and right thing. And of course, no, she's a woman, and so the government pretend like they're all into feminism and stuff when it comes to like looking after their hands and stuff, because they're making them do male type jobs. They of course don't give a shit, and they try and not pay out people who are injured and stuff. Of course, it's just feminist as an excuse to get all the politicians as feminists and as CEOs and stuff to promote the whole gender thing-o. But it's not like they actually care about the low-level women who have to, work doing building jobs and stuff like that, which is just totally inappropriate for them. Because I saw something in the Austin local news. They were talking about encouraging girls to become builders and going on a builder's summer camp. And I'm just like, oh, this leftist shit, And it's just like they're trying to make them do boys type stuff, and their bodies can't handle it. I'm a guy, I can't even handle physical work. Like, it takes like all this yoga and vitamins and stuff, and you got to have a really fit body to be able to handle physical work. It is exhausting, right? And they're getting women to do it, and it's just so silly. It's crazy. Anyway, so what was I saying? So what the lawyer did is, he wasn't really working for me, so he did this thing where I'd gotten hate comments on my Facebook, and he told me, screenshot those hate comments and we'll use them in the court case. And I thought, oh, okay, because I didn't really know why, but it was like, I thought it was so that to show the judge that after it happened, I got hate comments and that traumatized me, so I've been punished enough. And that's the argument that he used. But he knew that if you go to the judge and present all these hate comments, it shows that the public doesn't like this person, and so that the judge should give this person a big sentence. You see what I mean? So the lawyer got me to put up, my lawyer got me to put up arguments that didn't actually help my case. You see what I mean? Now, if I was the lawyer, I would have said, you know what, put some of the good comments that you received for what you did into the court case. And I would have said, no, just ignore the bad comments, okay? Because you don't want the judge thinking that there was like heaps of people that didn't like what you did. And there was heaps of people that didn't like what I did. But a lot of them, they didn't fully understand why, and mainstream media didn't like properly explain the situation. But anyway, as a lawyer, that's what I would say. I would say, no. You don't. What you want to show the judge is that it was a political message, and that there was some people who were on your side and stuff. And I wouldn't show to the judge that you'd gotten these hate comments on your Facebook, because it just doesn't make you look good, But of course, he didn't do that. He did the other opposite thing. So he went and handed a bunch of paper that was screenshots to the judge, and that wasn't assisting my case. That was making my case worse. But it appeared to me, who didn't really know the legal system, and to other people who didn't, it appeared like an okay argument, but it actually wasn't. That's the sort of shifty things they do. Anyway, so when the judge gave out this 200-hour community work and stuff, it was also a 1.5 years of good behaviour, which means if you get in trouble for anything, then you get into more trouble, which is kind of what happened later on, which I'll tell you about. But it means that the punishment is open for 1.5 years, and in that time you've got to do the things that the judge said. And if you don't do those things, or if you get in trouble for something new, then you can get into big trouble, and the judge can give you a new sentence again or something like that. So anyway, 1.5 years is pretty steep. But anyway, so the judge, anyway, when the judge gave out that punishment, the judge also somehow just lost the paperwork for the fine, and I actually never received it in the mail, because on top of that, I also had to pay like $20,000, right? And this is what was so ridiculous, $20,000 for the replacement of the grass that I had graffitied on. And so this is basically what happened. When they caught me, so when they went and saw the grass, I'm not kidding, the copper literally was like, yeah, instead of like painting over the white grass, instead of painting green over it, the copper was like, no, replace the grass so that it makes it cost like $10,000, and we'll charge him for it. And then we can also say that it was criminal damage and not graffiti, because they wanted to get me with criminal damage because that's a more severe charge, and graffiti is a lighter charge. So this is what they do. They walk up to the crime scene, they go, okay, cool, right, we're going to fuck him over, okay? Because the Victoria Police are leftist infiltrated. And I was going against the social engineering operation of that whole event, the gender thing. And so they go, okay, instead of, they basically go, well, we can't just take this to a judge and then let him get graffiti and get a $1,000 fine or something. We have to make this the biggest thing possible. We have to destroy him. So they said, we're going to make this criminal damage. So we need the groundskeeper to replace the grass, right? And replace as much grass as possible. So what ended up happening is that the groundskeeper cut out 3 times the amount of the dig. So not just the area of the dig, but 3 times like on either side. So this huge chunk of grass. So it ended up costing like 11 grand, right? That just to cut out the grass, go to the shop, buy new grass and put it back in. It was like 11 grand, right? It's just ridiculous when you factor in possibly that they could have bought seeds and sprinkled them on, or they could have just painted green paint over for like $150, right? But of course, this is why this enabled them to make it criminal damage, because then something was damaged, right? Because the grass had to get replaced. Now, if it wasn't damaged, then why wasn't the grass replaced? You see what I mean? See how shifty they are? They'll say, well, if it was graffiti, then how come it's not graffiti, it's criminal damage? Like, we had to replace the grass, you damaged it. So, you know, like if I went and spray painted your car, right, that would be graffiti. But if I went and gouged into the dashboard, the bonnet of the car, you might have to not just clean the graffiti off, you might have to actually get a whole new bonnet. And then that would make it criminal damage. So the first one, just graffiti, is graffiti. The second one, with scratching into the bonnet, is criminal damage. They made it into criminal damage by replacing the grass. They're shifty. And I spoke to someone who had done some work or something with the council, and he was old and wise. And he mentioned to me how somebody had illegally cut out a tree that the council told them not to cut out a tree. So they had some tree near their house that they didn't want, they just cut it out. And what the council did is they rocked up and they said, well, we're going to screw this person over. So they basically No, sorry, what they did is I think the person planted a tree where they weren't supposed to plant a tree or something. So the council rocked up, and this guy I was speaking to, my friend, who was actually there to hear the council person say, and I think the police or something like that, they literally said like, oh, you know, all right, well, cut out that tree and charge twice the amount you usually do and stuff, and don't worry, we're going to make the dude who did this pay for it and stuff. So it ended up being like a $6,000 cost to this person who did this like minor naughty thing, even though usually to just cut out a tree it would cost like $1,000. But they screwed him over intentionally because they knew they could get away with charging more, and they want to charge more because they make more money, and they knew that they were going to have to charge the guy who did it. So that's kind of what they did in my situation. It was just an openly dodgy thing. This is why you have to be careful, because when I decided to do graffiti, I was like, well, it was grass. You know, it's the most harmless thing you can do. And as a crime, it's graffiti. It's like, how minor crime can you get? You know, it's on grass. It wasn't on concrete even, or it wasn't on the side of a window because they could, you know, say that the glass got damaged, and that could be $3,000 to replace the panel. It was like, this is grass. But even then, they're so shifty, and when they come after right-wingers, they hate them so much that they're going to work out a way to blow that up and stuff it up. And I heard from a friend a similar thing where they'd done some stunt and it got in the media and stuff, and they were right-wingers, and the cleanup bill was like $1,500, and it was just literally some tomato sauce that was like on concrete. And it wasn't $1,500 worth of cleanup, but they did it intentionally to screw the person over. So this is the sorts of dodgy things they do. All right. They try and hit you with a book, you know. Anyway, so the judge. This is the first judge I had, because this is a lower level court, and you go up as you appeal. And appeal means you contest the decision that was made at the lower court, and you go up to higher ones. This judge knew that the 20 grand was steep, and she even mentioned it, and I could tell she knew it was bullshit. So even these judges know, and this judge I have, she wasn't a fake judge. She wasn't a police spy or anything like that. This first judge I had was a legitimate judge, right? Because they didn't need to corrupt her, because they'd already got me with a shifty lawyer. So they knew that the lawyer would make sure that I got a bad result. So she knew that there was a steep cleanup bill, and she knew that it was just ridiculous. It was 20 grand. And she actually never sent me the fine in the mail. She somehow conveniently lost it. And I made eye contact with her during the court case for a few seconds, and I could tell she actually kind of liked me, and she was like looking after me. Even though she did give me the 200 hours community work, she knew that on top of that, a 20 grand fine was just unreasonable. And she actually helped me out, which was quite nice. Like, she wasn't a sociopath, basically. But wait till I get to the next judge. I mean, oh my, whoa. Talk about an SP, you know. So I didn't get the fine for that in the mail, and that was good. And so sometimes they can do stuff like that, which is cool. And also actually in Victoria, sometimes even if the judge isn't even intentionally losing the paperwork, sometimes I've heard that they don't even chase things up. And this is why criminals just don't stop being criminals, because you've got these criminals that are on Centrelink, right? The fact that they've been in jail so many times enables them to stay on Centrelink, because who's going to hire them, right? They're on government welfare. Who's going to hire them? So they can always have the excuse, well, I've been in jail, so it's hard for me to find a job. They stay on Centrelink for ages, right? Then they get in trouble for something. Let's say they get high on ice and they smash down a telephone pole or something, and it's a 6 grand fine. They have the court case. They go to jail for a month or something like that. And the fine, it's called restitution, which means the money to repair what you did that broke. It's actually different to a fine. The restitution, 6 grand or whatever, honestly, sometimes it just doesn't even come in the mail. And even if it did come in the mail, they don't have to pay it. I mean, they're broke. They have no assets. They can just not pay it. So they went to jail for a month. It was kind of okay. They got to watch a lot of TV. They could read things. They could hang out with their criminal mates and stuff. They got good food. They get medical health care and stuff. They get all these psych drugs. They're just pumped up like there's no tomorrow on medication and government drugs, which are no different to heroin and stuff. They're just Big Pharma's version of heroin, which is methadone and these other ones. And so there's just no incentive for them not to be a criminal. You know what I mean? So anyway, so sometimes they don't even receive these things in the mail. But my one was actually like, I could tell by the way the judge looked at me and how she locked, and as she was giving the sentence, she quickly rushed off to a next thingo or something. And I could tell the way she looked at me, and she was like, oh yeah, I'll get it or something like that. I could tell that she lost the paperwork intentionally. She left it out because she knew it was steep. Anyway, so at that stage, I wanted to appeal the decision because I knew how I'd been stitched up with a lawyer and everything. And I wanted to have my fair share and say my point across to the judge. So then I went to an actual decent, good lawyer, of course expensive because it was independent of the government, because he wasn't one of these lawyers that would represent these government welfare type people. He was just a legitimate independent practitioner that even said to me he doesn't have anything to do with the government. He doesn't even know how lawyers apply to get the legal aid and stuff like that. It just isn't his thing. I think he was actually a bit of a sort of mafia type lawyer. He just, you know, because mafia is like Italian businessmen that are independent of the government. Except I'm sure a lot of them are tied in with the government. But they're sort of like, you know, just private family business and stuff. Anyway, he was a high IQ dude, I could tell, so I went with him and I was recommended him by someone else. And actually, if you want to hear the whole story, I mean, this is why I might as well just say everything because it's interesting, but the person who recommended this lawyer, he'd actually committed a murder, right? And I know it sounds dodgy, but the dude got into some sort of business fight because someone owed him money or something like that, and either he accidentally pushed him off a building or something, or he did it intentional, right? But the guy's all right, but I could see how he must have gotten really angry and so sometimes people just get angry, and so he just lost it and pushed this guy off a building, and he got charged with murder or whatever. And you know, like I guess like I'm not really friends with him. I don't want you to think, oh my god, Andrew's friends with a murderer. You know what I mean? Like it's just I came across him in business and stuff like that, and so you know. Anyway, so he had to hire this lawyer, and so he was charged with murder, and he got let off for it, and he got let off because they didn't have evidence, basically. And so he had to spend 70 grand like fighting the case. But unless you've got a videotape of someone pushing him off the building, how do you know he did it? All you know is that he was in the area while the person died. And that person owed him money, and it seems very much likely that he did it. But you could just say that the dude was walking on a building site or something like that, and he missed his step and just fell off an edge or something like that. So he fought that case and spent like 70 grand and won, which is right, because from a judge's point of view, they have to be totally sure the person did it before they can say the person's guilty. But he did, of course, get punished because of all the scaredness of being charged with murder and the 70 grand you had to pay, you know. But that's a tactic. What a tactic you need to know as well with the justice system is that the police will always be going for straight up, unless they have like the smoking gun, which is really unusual actually, they'll always go straight up for a confession. Like there's no tomorrow. They want that big time. So they imagine when they got this guy, they would have scared the hell out of him, done all these psychological tactics, just everything in the first few police interviews or something to get that guy to admit to it. They would say anything, do anything to get him to admit to it, because they knew that they didn't have a recording or anything of it happening. And they looked at the situation and they were like, this guy so did it, but we just don't know for sure, but he so did it. So they would have pressured him so much into confessing. And so that's what they do. When the police get you for just anything, they'll sit you down and they would, during the interview, they'll do everything possible to get you to admit to whatever they want you to admit to. So that's something you've got to understand, because the best bit of advice from the moment you see them is to shut up. That is the best advice ever, to not say a thing. And I mean that more than anything. Because everything you say, if you say, oh, this is where I keep my stamps or something like that, or this is the room that I used to watch TV in when they're in your house or something like that, or you say, oh, this is where I went to school 10 years ago or something like that, all that information assists them in their investigation and they'll use that against you. So you don't want to say anything. They played sort of nice guy, like good cop, bad cop sort of thing. And they probably decide this before they come to you to get you or whatever. They literally decide on, you know, are we going to go with good cop, bad cop, whatever. And the good cop is to be nice and to offer them drinks and to talk to them and to just smooth them up and get the person, you know, nice and oily and happy and stuff. And then they can get information from the guy and then eventually they can get a confession. So they know exactly what they're doing. They're brilliant at it. They do it as their job day in, day out. They're excellent at spotting lies and everything. So honestly, the best advice is to take the vow of silence. That's what you should do. If you're innocent or guilty, you should shut up. Shut up. Go speak to a lawyer or assess the situation later. But you shouldn't say anything, because how they operate is you're going about doing something and then suddenly they rock up at your house and it's a real surprise and you're like, it's a real shock. You know, unless you've done something really big, like you just blew up a building or something, and then obviously the next few weeks, any moment you're sort of expecting it. But it could be like that. In that situation, it's not quite a surprise because you're like, oh, I knew they'll get me or something like that. But like if, you know, it might be that you're just like, it's some sort of crime that you had no idea about, or you had no suspicion that they were coming after you, and you just out of nowhere, you think that they knock on the front door and you think they're there to talk about the neighbour's cat being stuck up a tree or something like that. And it's a real shock and you're like, whoa, and you're suddenly on the back step and you're like, whoa, I don't know what's going on and everything. So it's a real shock. So the best thing is to shut up. And honestly, I wouldn't even answer the door to their house. I wouldn't even talk to them. I would stay totally away from them. And it's not that I'm guilty of anything. It's because I know that as soon as you get in trouble with them, it could be thousands of dollars in legal fees or something like that. And so, you know, if you see a copper knocking on your front door, you just think, okay, I'm not going to answer the door. Okay, I'm not getting involved. I'm staying away from this. If you live with someone else, tell them to go and answer the front door and say that I'm not home or something like that, if they're asking for me, or just find out what they're asking for. But personally, I'm just saying I wouldn't answer the door because I know how the system is, and it's just like, whoa, I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to have anything to do with it. I'd stay 10. And then if they are after you, right, then someone else answers the door and then you find out. So then at least you know. So you know, oh crap, I've got to get my phone. I've got to call up a lawyer quickly. You have an extra time to prepare before they get you. But if you walk to the front door, they slap the cuffs on you and then they take you away. You can't do those phone calls. You can't get the clothes together or the phone together or anything. Like, you need that extra time. It's essential. Right, so that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that you, even if you haven't done anything wrong, right? Like I haven't done anything wrong. I doubt you've done anything wrong. Like let's say with the COVID rules or something like that, or in the future the vaccine rules. Just if you see the cops, I would not walk near them. I would not answer the door. I would just stay away totally. I'll go quiet. And, you know, I mean, and if I did do something and was guilty of something, then obviously I definitely would then try and avoid the cops as much as possible. But even if I was totally innocent, I wouldn't walk up to them. And they're probably knocking on the door about the neighbor's car or something like that. And it's just some routine thing, but I just wouldn't take that risk because I know that I just wouldn't take that risk, right? And you also realize this when you do, once you are locked up, you think about all the things that you could have done just before that you were locked up, and you kind of wish you could go back in time and correct those mistakes so that you're not in that situation, because now you're locked up, you're stuck. You know what I mean? So anyway, like, I mean, I would even, you know, one day when I have my own house or something like that, even though the odds of it, if this ever happening, of me getting arrested again are really slim, I would literally have my own like escape chute built into my house. Like, honestly, I would build like escape tunnels and shit, and they'll barely ever get used, but I'll just have them there just in case, because one day something could happen where I'm framed for something that I didn't do. And I don't want to have any regrets, like, oh shit, you know, I don't want to be sitting there in jail, like, oh, I'm being accused for something, I'm having to stay in jail for 1 year while the court case gets handled and I get found innocent. And if I just had that escape chute, I would have been in there and I would have been able to know that they were after me, and I could have gotten away, and I could have at least had a head start or something like that. But I would seriously, everyone who's listening to this, I would honestly recommend in your house, you have some hiding spot, like maybe under the floorboards or something, that you can, if you get into some sort of tricky situation, you can shoot down into and stay in there and hide, right? So someone can't get you. I would honestly recommend that. And if you're political and if you're famous, then I absolutely would recommend that. So someone like Alex Jones, I didn't even have to ask him, right? I guarantee you Alex Jones would have like a whole escape emergency plan for when the government come after him. Okay, so weirdly the camera just turned off. It's probably ghost interference. That sort of stuff actually happens. I was watching some video of some person who was like psychic, and there was some sort of mediumship sort of person, and their camera would actually go fuzzy for like no reason and stuff, and she'd be like, oh, it's ghost interfering. And then I've had moments sometimes where the camera would just interfere for no reason at all. Anyway, so with Alex Jones, like I was saying, he certainly would have an escape plan all set up. He would probably have literally a routine set up, like when he sees them at his house or something like that, he would probably have an escape chute to go to, a bunch of weapons to grab onto, a few people to instantly quickly call, and then they, like his lawyer, and they would know exactly what to do if he got locked up, and he would have all that prepared because he knows that they're after him. So he certainly should have escape chutes built into his own house, and I bet you he would. And so, yeah, anyway, so I'll recommend it for everyone, honestly. And I don't think it would be that hard to somehow build into your house some sort of location that you could hide into. Anyway, another thing is that when they come and they do their investigation, they take your phone from you, they take like your diary from you, they take your computer from you, and that's it. They've got them now. So when they're doing their investigation, so for me, with the graffiti thing, there's so much detail to this thing that I've got to tell you. For example, so they came to me at my house at the time, and they came and they arrested me and they brought me back to the place for the interviews, and then, you know, an hour into it, over I confessed or whatever. But they'd taken my phone and my laptop, and I think that, well, they don't give it back. They take it and they need it for the court case and stuff, and the court case can take months and months and months to get through. So your phone's gone, your freaking phone and your computer. So that's why you've got to have these things regularly backed up. Like, you should have your phone backed up in case you lose it and stuff like that, but also in case you get arrested. Like, you just lose all your data. Like, they've got your phone now. And then at the end of the court case, you might get it back. And I think I got some of my stuff back at the end of the court case, but sometimes they might never get given back. Like, if they were actually used in the crime, then they don't ever get taken back and they get destroyed or something like that. So that's another thing you got to factor in as well. So I confessed to it and I didn't get locked up or anything. I just went to the courthouse and was in a cell for like 20 minutes waiting for the interview. And so I didn't get locked up, and I confessed to it, and my court case was in like another 2 months' time. But when they released me, I got released without my phone, without my computer, and those things are essential. So imagine if you're running like a small business or something like that, that can wreck you. That's a massive punishment in itself, you see. So that's why I was so shocked, because getting in trouble with the police was such a bigger gradient than getting in trouble with high school. High school, it's like one detention. This was like, whoa, this was like, you've taken my phone with like all my details on it and stuff, interfered with my business. They also took 2 of my cars and my wallet and stuff, and they only gave like my wallet and the cars back because I confessed. If I hadn't have confessed, this is what you need to know as well. If I hadn't have confessed to it, they would have said, no, we need it for the investigation. If you cooperate, we'll help you out. But you're not getting you're not getting your mobile back. You're not getting your phone back. No, sorry, you're not getting your wallet back. So I'm like, what? So you just released me from the station without a phone, without my laptop, without my credit cards and my wallet. I mean, even my ID's in that wallet. Do you see what I mean? They can just do that, right? So, I mean, I confessed to it, right? They had the evidence. They had the footage of me walking in and out of my house, right? And also they knew because of the phone, the chips in the phone. They secretly knew. The phone was switched off, but they secretly knew from that, because they can, like Edward Snowden said, they can track switched off phones. That's how they knew. So they couldn't use that in the court case, but they knew totally that I did it. So they knew they were going to push me to confess massively. So if I hadn't have confessed that day that they came and got me, they wouldn't have given my car back, and that car I needed for work. They wouldn't have given my wallet back, and they would have done it to play this game to force me into confessing that I'd done it. You see what I mean? So these sorts of things can happen, and I'm not saying that will happen to everyone, right? But in the situation I was in, I could tell totally that they would have screwed me over if I didn't cooperate. And they actually were that was the only time I think they were a little bit nice, is after I'd done the confession and stuff like that, they did not make it any harder than what was necessary. Because they could see that I, assisted them by, confessing to it and stuff. But yeah, this is what can happen. So they can coerce people into confessing, and they can even in some situations they could just take the person in and just keep them locked up, and say, nah, we're locking you up until a court case or something like that, until you confess to it or something like that. So you're really at the mercy of them. Like, although there are laws, I thought that they were controlled by these laws and the book and stuff like that, but it's just like, no, they have a lot of freedom and they can just do what the fuck they want. Anyway, so I was talking about the appeal, right? And the appeal, I appealed the decision and stuff. And there's something else. Oh, part of the bail condition. This is where it's like you're already so punished before you even get the punishment. So they've arrested you and that's screwed you over that day, and they've taken your belongings and they're holding on to them until the court case, right? Then they release you, right? And when they release you, they also made a bail requirement. It's called bail when they release you. They made a bail requirement that I had to report to the police station once a week. and just sign something. That's annoying. So you've got, when in high school you get in trouble, you get a detention. In the real world, you get in trouble and you've got to go to detention every week because you've got to go to that police station, you've got to travel there, and that takes time, and then sign the thing and then come back. So that's like a detention every week until your court case. And then they've confiscated your phone for like 3 months. That's a punishment. Do you see what I mean? So, and then you've got to pay for legal fees, and then you've got to rock up to the court case, and they're usually about 3 court cases. Best case scenario, 3 times you have to go to the court case until it's solved. Or maybe best case scenario 2. You might be able to do it in 1 day if you... Actually, maybe even 1 day if you just confess straight up. But anyway, I think it's more like at least 2 times. So that's annoying. You have to go travel into the city and everything and wait around for your court case and all that sort of stuff. And that's a whole half day written off. So that's why I was like, when I got the community work, I was like, I'd already been so heavily punished already. I mean, I said, this is horrible. I'll never do something illegal again. This is really steep. I didn't realize it would be this bad, you know? And also I think when I did the graffiti, I didn't realize you could get, you would have to pay that much in legal fees or, because to go to the courthouse for a few times, that costs like 10 grand or something like that. That's how expensive it is, you know. You got to go for your consultation with the lawyer before you go to the courthouse, and just all this crap. It's expensive and it's just a lot of effort. But what I did was just graffiti. So you would think that, you think it's kind of like a speeding fine, like, you get a fine for graffiti. You think it would be that simple, but it's like, no, it's not like that. So, but I know that mine was political, but anyway, you don't want to go anywhere near the justice or legal system. It's just horrible. And even the vibe of when you walk into the courthouse and the security guards and the judges and the whole environment has a really bad vibe to it, like a really dirty, it's not a pleasant environment. It's got for a spiritual person and an empathic sort of person, you don't like it. It's not nice. And I imagine, it's not nice. It just doesn't feel nice. Anyway, so I appealed the decision, and so I didn't start the community work, so I was appealing the decision. And I was saying with that whole mafia lawyer thing, that I spoke to that lawyer, and lawyers, because they've been in the whole system. What is the whole system? It's socialist, it's leftist. They've been to the leftist universities, right? Lawyers are trained in being lefties. They're trained in the idea that society needs to be controlled, basically, and that society needs all these laws. And all these politicians, they're all lawyers. The people in power in our society are all lawyers. The judges, they're lawyers. They're all lawyers, right? Except someone like Trump. That's why Trump's so good, because he's actually from the free market. He's like a businessman that got into it. That's why there's such a good breath of fresh air. But all these other people, they're all lawyers. And I once dated a girl who was a lawyer, and she, I remember talking to her about like how we don't need all these laws and we don't need the government. We can just be free and things actually get along fine. And she was like, no, you're ill-informed. And so, because what is she? She's a big victim of the government leftist universities and brainwashing system. So when you go to a lawyer, you're talking to someone who's a victim of the system. And so the person's a leftist and doesn't even know it. They're socialist and they don't even know it. They're totally trained that the government needs to do everything. You need to have all these laws and everyone needs to be supervised and stuff, because that's the whole idea of the legal system and everything. That's why I could never be a lawyer, because people will come to me and I'll be like, I don't even believe in this whole system. I think this is all a rot, and the government shouldn't have these sorts of power, and the whole system's a joke. and I'll be like, I don't even want to be a part of it. I don't even want to give you legal advice because I don't want to be a part of the whole system. The only thing I'll say to you is just run and stay away from the legal system totally. But anyway, from looking into it, lawyers as a profession has a really high amount of sociopaths. Whoa. And also, obviously, a high amount of communists and socialists. Like, it's wrought with them, right? It's like, and I knew someone growing up who actually was a sociopath, and amazingly, he wanted to be a lawyer. And I was just like, how do these people gravitate towards law? Like, other people gravitate towards like cool professions and professions that actually provide something to the world, but you gravitate towards a parasitic profession. That's what it's like. The stock traders, the stock market, and all that sort of stuff. It's a parasitic, and banking. It's all a parasitic profession. Like, they really don't add stuff to the world. They don't build the world. They just stand there arguing about other people who are working, and then ask money to stand around arguing with a judge about other people who actually work and contribute to the world. But it was just really interesting seeing this guy gravitate towards law, and how he was sociopathic, and I was just like, wow. And then coming across some people in the law profession and seeing how they're sociopathic, it's like they just like attracts like, and they all sort of attract each other. And it's the same I noticed with the stand-up comedy. There's lots of communists and stuff, and a lot of people who are sociopathic and stuff, and they attract towards each other. It's just it's a spiritual, metaphysical thing. Like attracts like, and I think it's because they instinctively can recognize jobs that have more power than other jobs, and they can notice that lawyers had probably commanded more respect or had more power in the society, and notice that they don't really do much physical work. So them being parasitic type personalities, they gravitate towards these professions of law. So it was just really interesting seeing that. I was just like, oh, trust you to want to be a lawyer. You totally have that lawyer attitude. Like, they love to like wear the suit and look classy and to rock up. But there's some really great lawyers. That's why I'm not saying they're all bad, but I'm just saying that, like stand-up comedy and banking, there's a huge percentage of sociopaths in that profession, and psychology as well. Not so much these days, but it was more in the 60s. But a huge amount of sociopaths go into that. Sociopaths tend to always gravitate towards scam professions. It's just naturally, because they don't like to be honest and stuff. They don't give a shit about being honest. They just want to make money. And so they end up doing these dodgy jobs like salesman jobs and lawyers and stuff like that. So yeah, that's why you just have to be careful about what you're getting involved in when you're finding a lawyer and stuff like that, because you might come across a sociopathic one and stuff. And that's also how I spotted that my lawyer was dodgy in the first place. It wasn't just the job that he did on the court case. I just noticed one or two things that made me think, oh, this guy's a bit of a 1-1, or like this guy's a bit of a sociopath. So he was on my radar, you see. And I wasn't paying for it. So that's also, you might go, Andy, why were you so dumb? Shouldn't you know the Scientology tone scale and 1-1s and stuff? How'd you get tricked by it? And it's like, no, I was suspicious from him from day one, but I wasn't paying. So I was like, okay, we'll see how this goes. But I mean, if I was paying, I probably would have just said from day one, nah, I'm not going along with this. But what happens is that once you had the decision from the first judge, that can cause you problems in the future. So you actually do want to get it right from the start, because this is what happened with me. When I appealed my case to the next judge, which is the county court in Melbourne, the next level up judge, even though she wasn't supposed to look at the results of my previous court case, they weren't supposed to get brought up or something like that, because that's what the rules are or something. She totally saw the results of the previous court case and even referred to them. So this is where the rule book is so big and convoluted that they can just do whatever they want. And because this new judge I had was absolutely out to get me, she totally looked at the previous results, and she based her decision on the previous results, right? So that's why it's like, you know, you can talk to a lawyer and the lawyers can say, oh, well, this is what's happened. The rules are blah, 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 or the law is blah, 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 blah. But then the law can just not be followed. So they could say, I don't know, you have a court case and they can say the law is that you're allowed to have this witness come in or something like that. And you think, oh, that's great. But then push comes to shove and that witness doesn't come. And you're like, why not? And they're like, oh, the judge just decided not to. And it's just like, there is no law. You have to understand, there is no law. The judge is boss and they can do whatever they want. There's so many laws, so many rules, they can just decide whatever they want. And if I'd known that, I probably never would have done it in the first place, because like they could have they threw the book at me and stuff. I thought that their hands were tied and they could just do a $1,500 fine for graffiti and that was it. I didn't know that they could make it into criminal damage and all this sort of stuff. And then anyway, so when I went for the appeal, I was representing myself. And I got the advice from the mafia lawyer I was sort of telling you about. He wasn't really a mafia lawyer, but he was Italian, and I'm sure he'd done sort of a little bit of mafia sort of stuff. And he basically looked at my case and he didn't. This is what's annoying about these lawyers, because they're government brainwashed and stuff. They don't just tell it how it is. Like if he'd said to me, look, the legal system is pretty dodgy. They're going to stitch you up on this appeal, and they're probably going to stitch you up on the appeal and you won't get any result in it, and it'll just be a waste of time. If he'd said that, I would have been like, oh, okay. But he just said to me, he looked at it and he just goes, he goes, this is a high profile thing and I don't know if it's worth doing and stuff. But he didn't explain, and so I was like, no, I want to get my fair share and blah, 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 blah. Like he didn't, if he'd fully explained to me the lowdown of how the system really works. Like I would now, if I was in his shoes now and someone came to me who something sort of similar happened, I would go, dude, the legal system is horrendously corrupt. You think that your previous lawyer was secretly working for them? Well, this time round, you're probably going to have the judge secretly working for them, and they're probably going to totally stuff up your case. I just do the community work and just move on, because there's the whole system comes after right wingers and stuff. There's nothing you can do about it. You know, that's what I would have said. I would have said, you don't know how fucked up the system is, right? But this lawyer didn't say that. He looked at it and he sort of knew how things worked, but he just wasn't completely honest about it. And he was just like, oh, I don't know if it's really worth it. And so that was his advice, and he was actually kind of right with the appeal. It actually caused more problems, the appeal. But he didn't tell me the inside baseball. You've got to tell me the inside baseball. I had a similar thing happen with a doctor once who, recommended some advice, but they didn't explain the theory behind the advice. So I didn't get anywhere with it, because I didn't understand what was happening with the medical advice. But if they'd said, this is what you should do and this is why, then I'll go, oh, I get it. That's why in these videos I try and explain all the background information, because it's important to understand why, the theories behind it. Every time you go to a doctor, you're not going to get advice, you're going to get educated. Don't go to a doctor if they just go, yep, do this, boom, boom, boom. No, they have to look at your situation, explain the whole background of it, and then you'll have your problem solved. Like I went to a naturopath, she didn't explain to me what the hell was going on. She just goes, take these vitamins, blah, 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 blah. And then I went to a better one, and the better one sat down, looked at my situation and goes, she was a lot smarter, and she goes, this is what I think has happened. Okay, you've got this detox problem, right? Your body's not, basically, she goes, your body doesn't have this protein, and without this protein you can't detox, so your body is continually accumulating chemicals. And when you do accumulate chemicals in your body, then it causes these reactions in your body, and then this is why we need to do blah, 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 blah. And then I go, oh my God, I get it. And then after that, I don't even need to see that doctor again, because now I can do these certain things to detox and it solves my problem, right? But the previous freaking naturopath didn't explain all the data behind it, so I couldn't understand what was going on. So that's what's really important when you go to get legal advice or doctor's advice. And you shouldn't be going to a mainstream doctor, because they wouldn't be able to give you the backstory. They'll just probably punch it in a computer and say, take this, and they won't even know the backstory. You have to go to top quality naturopath. But you've got to get the theory behind it. You've got to understand yourself. You've got to be your own lawyer. And you're just occasionally talking to an actual lawyer to get advice on your case. You've got to be your own doctor, and you're just occasionally talking to a real doctor to get some advice, right? But you have to do it yourself. You can't just sit there and let them do the whole show, because they'll cause problems, right? Anyway, so this good lawyer that I had, he just didn't really give me the full explanation of how the system works. So that's why honestly I would make a good lawyer. Like, if people want to contact me for legal advice or whatever, contact me, because I reckon I could give out good advice, like seriously good legal advice, even though I'm not even a lawyer, because I get the rundown of it. And I had a friend who was a right-winger who had a few numerous run-ins with the law because they were picking on him, right? That's another thing that they do. They just, if you're a right-winger and you're causing political change, they're just going to come after you for bullshit stuff and lock you up. And even though there's criminals out there on the street actually doing crimes, they won't bother investigating that. They're going to go after the right-winger. And so the right-winger is always having to go to court for some stupid little thing, and it's always wasting their time and always causing problems, and they're just being bullied basically for their political beliefs. So this is how they've made the system socialistic. This is how they've made it all this lefty shit everywhere, because they've picked on right-wingers for the past 60 years or whatever. And they've been bullying them. Like, they're doing it now more than ever, but they've been bullying them, and the right-winger just ends up giving up, because they're just like, I'm sick of having to go to these stupid court cases over all these little things. You know? So the system's rigged, it's corrupt. Anyway, I've got to wrap up this briefing. But what was I saying? So then I went to do the court case, and I was representing myself, and I'll finish off the briefing with this. Now, I already sort of mentioned this, but now that they hadn't corrupted my lawyer to make sure I get a bad result, because it's not just that they want to suppress a right-winger, it's also that they want to use that as a news piece. The socialists want to use it as a news piece to say, look at what this anti-feminist did. He is horrible, and splash his name everywhere. He's a terrible anti-feminist. He's a disgusting anti-vaxxer. They want to trash the person's name as much as possible. And if you see a news story that says, this anti-vaxxer got 2 weeks community work or something like that, it doesn't look all bad and dirty and nasty. But if it goes, this anti-vaxxer got a $20,000 fine and 2 years community work and 10 months jail, and it creates the impression on the news that right-winger or that anti-vaxxer is an evil dude. But the guy's not evil. He's just being made out to be evil by the media, and because of the big sentence. And this is the tactic that they use. So people who don't understand the system will hear about Joe Blow, and they'll look up, I don't know, Joe Blow's Wikipedia, and they'll go, Joe Blow's Wikipedia, oh, he did 6 months in jail. Oh, Joe Blow must be bad because he did 6 months in jail. Whereas I know the truth about the justice system and how it's corrupted. And if I see Joe Blow did 6 months jail, I just think, okay, well, he could have been stitched up. I mean, that doesn't, like, what he did could have only been worth 1 week of community work as an actual punishment. But because of his political beliefs, they've blown it out of proportion. And they changed the Wikipedia pages and stuff, so the person's name comes up, and the first thing you see underneath it is a criminal. And then it mentions their other things that the person's known for. But they do that. This is how all the socialist and the socialist world government operate, how So they give that person a bad name, and it's like they're creating the impression that it's a Mr. Bad Guy so that he can't go on TV and do interviews. He can't do this. He can get banned off the internet and everything because he's done a year in jail, but it was a setup, and they're intentionally trying to dirty the person's name. But I know that when dumbass lefties will go out there, and people who just don't know how the world works, and they'll hear the rumor about the guy being in jail for a year, they'll go, oh, he must be bad, or something like that, or oh, we can't interview him, or something like that. He's an evil person, right? And it's like, no, he's not evil. They've intentionally given him that bad sentence so it appears like he's a murderer. Do you see what I mean? So it appears like he's an actual evil criminal. They've intentionally done that. And when like a current affair, like some of those news shows, they do a story about a right-winger, they'll go, oh, Joe Blow, the right-winger, who's previously been convicted and been to jail. And so this is why they want to give the guy a jail sentence, so that then they can say that, so they can discredit the person. It's all about discrediting the person, right? But I know how the system works. And so if I look up some famous right-winger's page and it says 1 year jail, I actually instantly think, oh, the system's gotten after him. And then you look into it and you find out that they were getting him on some tax thing, and it was like some dodgy tax thing, and you can tell that they were using it as an excuse, and it really wasn't worth a year worth of jail, but they're using it as an excuse to suppress this right-winger, and it's just bullshit. So anyway, now that they set me up with a dodgy lawyer to stitch me up so I got a bad result, right? For propaganda purposes, but also because they just wanted to suppress me as well. Like openly, they want to suppress right-wingers, make things hard for them so that they give up their political beliefs and possibly change their mind. How are they gonna get a bad result again? Because I'm doing the appeal, right, of the case. What if I appeal and get a good result and overturn it all? They don't want that to happen, right? So what would they do? If I don't have a lawyer, if they can't set me up with a dodgy lawyer and I'm actually going to defend myself and do a good job of it, what can they do next? Well, they can corrupt the judge. And what they do is they have judges on their payroll, the same as they have lawyers on their payroll. So they've got these secret informer policemen, but they've also got these secret informer judges. Because judges have access to information, all that sort of stuff. And they want those judges to give out certain results on certain things. So in my situation, I got handed a judge who, I don't know this for sure, there was not like with the other one, which I can know for sure, but this other judge, I just know, because it's so obvious, that I was set up with a judge, basically. And that's how they guaranteed on the appeal that the punishment would remain the same, and that was a result of the appeal. Even though there was all this different information added into it and everything, and I'll get into that into the next video, but this is why it goes, there's so much to say in this, because it's a whole education on the justice system in a socialist city like Melbourne, the world's most socialist city. Because this is a war against socialism. It's a war against leftists. That's literally what's going on. Anyway, so that's what I'll leave it with. The next thing is I'm going to tell you the details of the appeal and the outrageous behaviour coming from the judge, and the judge was working for them. And it's just very likely. The way she behaved was just outrageous. And it wasn't reasonable at all. So that's some of the tactics that they'll use. I think the first tactic they resort to is they want to get you with a dodgy lawyer. So let's say somebody opened up their business during a COVID lockdown and they're not supposed to. I would, and also it was really public. If anything's in the media and public, then watch out. I would be concerned as to who contacts you and offers to be your lawyer or something like that. Or if you hire a lawyer, but I'll be concerned if they might corrupt the lawyer or something. and then they'll give you a bad result. And then if you appeal it, I'll be then worried about the judge at the appeal, the judge being unbiased. Because what's the whole point of a court case? You walk up to the judge decides what's going to happen, if you're guilty or not, and the punishment. You say your side, the other side says their side. So the other side's the police side. And they say their arguments and you say your arguments. And it's basically a conversation to work out what's the most appropriate punishment, or if the person's guilty. Well, if you want to stitch it up, you want to go straight to the judge. But they don't do that every time. They would probably save it to trying to corrupt the lawyer, because then the lawyer can help the conversation go a certain way so that the person gets a bad result. It's all just a formal conversation with suits on and with, just suits on in a fancy room and everything. But essentially, it's like a naughty kid in high school walking up with a teacher to the principal or something like that, and then the principal just deciding. And there's no book or anything, there's no laws, it's just them deciding what they want to do. And that's kind of what's going on, but like a fancy adult version where they charge a lot of money for it. So that's the whole next thing I'll get into in the next briefing, is the corrupted judge thing, which is very interesting. Because that was when the penny dropped, because I actually had a bit of faith that it wouldn't be that dodgy. Because at that stage I wasn't totally sure my lawyer was dodgy, and then when I got hit with the dodgy judge, it was like, whoa, because I'd put all this effort into it, being my own lawyer and stuff. It was really interesting. And then to just get slapped in the face like that, and to know 10 minutes into it, there's no chance of me getting a better result at all, and I've just totally wasted my time on all of this because I've now been stitched up with a dodgy judge. Anyway. Also, I'll quickly mention, with the bail conditions, like I was saying before, when you get let out on bail, they can control you with the bail conditions. That's a tactic they use, and they used it on the right-winger Tommy Robinson, where he was just hit with bullshit charges. They just make up charges. Honestly, you've got to listen to some of the Tommy Robinson stuff, because it's really confronting. It's like my story, but much scarier, because some of the stuff, I actually did do graffiti, you know what I mean? But some of the things that they did with Tommy Robinson was that they sometimes hit him with stuff that he didn't even do. They just literally made something up. And then they'll charge him with it, and then they'll give him a bail condition till a court case. And when the court case would come around, he would be found guilty. They would just drop the court case, but for months and months they had him on the tough bail conditions. And part of the bail condition would be that you can't post stuff on the internet. You can't associate with these sort of people. You can't do this and that. And so the guy's forced to accept those rules, right? Because he doesn't want to wait in jail for like 6 months while this court case is getting dealt with. So he's got no choice. He's just got to accept these ridiculous bail conditions. So that's a tactic that they can use to control people and punish people with the bail conditions. And at the end of the day, you can get set innocent. You know what I mean? Like, I guess set free, get set innocent, but it doesn't matter. They've still abused you for the past 4 months where you're going through the whole process. And with Tommy Robinson, they sent him to, this is what's so dodgy, when they sent him to jail, they sent him to, and this happened to a friend in Melbourne, they sent the dude to a place where they knew that he would get killed, where there was Muslims who they knew that the Muslims were after him. And Tommy Robinson's story is actually scary, because he was like, why are you sending me to this part of the prison? I demanded not to be sent here. This is crazy. Let me out and stuff. Send me to a different part. This is totally dangerous. And they intentionally put Tommy Robinson into a part of the prison where some Muslims might murder him. And that's because they want him to get murdered. That's just how hardcore the socialist world government is, and their intelligence departments and stuff, which work through our national intelligence departments like the CIA and ASIO and stuff like that, and MI6 or whatever, they work through them all in the FBI. It's all infiltrated by the socialist world government. They bring about these things. And they will do stuff, if you're a prominent right-winger, they'll do stuff as wild as sending you in to a part of the jail where they know you'll get killed. So they're willing to murder you. And then it just looks like some angry Muslim did it. And the big question is, well, why the hell do they send you into that dangerous part of the prison? I mean, there are staff in prison that are set aside specifically to decide an appropriate place to send the prisoner to. And in 2 seconds, you can work it out that it will be inappropriate to send into a part of Tommy Robinson to a part of the prison where the Muslims are. And the same to the dude in Melbourne. It was Neil Erickson. The part of the prison he was getting sent to, it takes you 2 seconds to calculate that. And it's just like, you just don't send them to that part. I remember when I went into prison with my thing, and I'll tell you about it later on, but they sat me down and they weren't trying to murder me or anything like that. I mean, they just stitched me up by giving me, the 5-month sentence, which was rubbish. And so, they waited like a whole month before they sent me to the actual place I was going to do the sentence at, because the first one was just you're just in a temporary prison. They came and talked to me, and you could tell they were deciding of an appropriate place, and they were like, oh, would you like to go to this prison? And it would be like blah, 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 blah. And it was all reasonable and cool. But when they got their hands on Neil Erickson, his sentence was extremely short, so they didn't even need to send him to any other prison. They could have just left him at the assessment prison, because it was less than a month, so why even bother sending him to the longer term one? And they'd already decided where he was going to go, and then when he found out, he didn't want to go there, and he had to kick up a fuss to not go there because he knew his life was in danger. And they still managed to send him there. And the prison guards, when he got there, the prison guards looked at him and were like, you've only got 4 days left on your sentence. What the fuck are you doing here? This is like a prison for long-term prisoners, for hardcore prisoners. And this dude, Neil Erickson, this right-winger, what he did wasn't the type of prison you go to for what he did. He just bullhorned some Muslim event. He just made some prank YouTube video. Firstly, you shouldn't get jail time for that at all, right? But knowing the system, of course, that they picked on him and gave him a month's jail. But you should not at all go to that jail, and especially since he was begging not to go there, and he had to come up with he had to pretend like he had COVID and stuff to delay the whole thing. And so by the time he ended up getting there, he only spent 4 days there, because otherwise he would have spent like 14 days there. So anyway, and when he got there, the prison guards, luckily it was only 4 days, and they did something, they put him to some special thingo, because the guards there weren't in on the plot to get him knocked off or to just, cause a problem. And the prison guards, they were honestly terrified, because they were like, this dude's new to prison and stuff. And he openly said to them, he goes, I'm not going to go and hide in my cell all day and stuff like that. And so they were like, shit, this guy is in a Muslim prison, in a long-term prison. He's not supposed to be here. They knew that this guy's life is actually in danger. And Neil told me, he said that he could see how the prison guards were actually scared when they spoke to him, and they were scared for him. They were like, oh crap. Because the prison guards, the lower level prison guards, are actually kind of nice, but it's the upper level ones and the socialists at the top who somehow decided that he would go to this dodgy part of the prison. But that's what can happen. That's what's really concerning, because if you become like some sort of famous right-winger or something like that, they can stitch you up and get you into jail, and you can only be doing a month in jail, but they'll send you to a part of the prison where you can get killed. That's how, you have to know how extreme they are. It's crazy. And there was some dude who threw some sandwiches at a mosque, and he got like a 3-year sentence, and it's just outrageous when you look at the crimes that go on, because I got to see some of the stuff that go on and what they get away with, and then you see the things that what political people get given, and it's so unfair. Anyway, that's it for this briefing. I just wanted to tell you that, but if you want to add to these briefings, look up Tommy Robinson. I listened to one thing where he was talking for about an hour and a half, and he went through his experiences, and it was just like, oh my God. And this was, when I listened to that was while Neil Erickson was going through his thingo, and I was like, this is crazy, man. I'm like, Neil might die. Like, this is just like, they really are brutal. Anyway, you've been listening to the Indie Scientology podcast. I'm your host, Andy Nolch, the Space Cowboy. Until next time, remember, what you thought was impossible is possible. And that last thing was totally, I would have thought it would be something more impossible. I would have thought that would only happen to someone like Julian Assange or whatever, but they can do crazy shit.